In 1996, Ior Bock published his work, Bock's Family Saga, The Mythology of Väinämöinen, edited by Juha Jäävenäinen. At the book's launch event on October 1st, in the music hall of the Old Student House, or Vanha, at the University of Helsinki, Bock stood naked in front of Robert Wilhelm Ekman's 4-meter-high painting called Väinämöinen's Play. He proceeded to sing about the central characters of the book, as well as those of the painting, who are one and the same. Bock requested that the book's publisher never pay him any royalties for the work. He said, "I received it for free, and I also want to pass it on for free." Greetings, fellow Bock Saga enthusiasts. My name is Vicky, and I recently discovered the book Väinämöinen's Play, Leminkäinen's Wedding, the mysterious history, stories, and characters according to the Kalevala and Bock Saga by Leo Nygren, which is in Finnish. After translating it with the help of Google Translate and some friends from the Bock Saga English Telegram chat, I felt compelled to share this astonishing information with the wider English-speaking audience. I understand there is some controversy regarding Nygren's work, as he's notorious for conflating Bock Saga lore with the Kalevala and Greek mythology, which Ior Bock did not expound on, as well as for neglecting source references. I decided to cover the entire book anyway, so that we can discuss later any discrepancies or corrections. At the very least, we'll all learn a little bit more about the inscrutable Kalevala. This book weaves together the works of 3 important men in Finnish cultural history: Zacharias Topelius, author, poet, and librettist for the opera The Princess of Cyprus; Elias Lönnrot, compiler of the epic Kalevala; and the court painter Robert Wilhelm Ekman, whose magnum opus Väinämöisen soitto, or Väinämöinen's Play, is a result of the zeitgeist of mid-19th century Finland. But more important here, this painting encapsulates the characters of the Bock Saga and their most sacred event, the wedding of Leminkäinen and Suometar. And so here is my humble slideshow presentation. Feel free to pause on certain frames, as there is a lot of detail I'll likely gloss over in the interest of time. Enjoy. Introduction. This Finland is a special country and people. First of all, there are a few hundred kilometers of thick slab of rock below us that doesn't vibrate much, so our ancestors were wise when they chose this place for us to live. There is a lot to admire in the beautiful nature, lakes, and forests, where we get that rare every man's right to walk and pick berries and mushrooms, and listen to the bird orchestras and their soloists, the blackbirds and nightingales, sing. But what makes this nation special is that no one officially knows the origin of our language. Suomi, Finland, and Helsinki are also completely unknown in their meanings. We are still the only nation that eats that delicious-looking and tasting mämmi during Easter. We were pagans longer than many other nations. We still send Easter witch cards to our friends. And we sing about Ukko Noah as a decent man who went to the sauna. Well, that doesn't mean anything, but the root words mean more because it's a drinking song, Drikka Hikka, that has only been sung at the August Ides crayfish parties, and only male citizens participated in it. All the children in the world know that Joulupukki, Santa Claus, is Finnish. He is the goodwill ambassador to the world. There's no need to ask others. His place of residence, Korvatunturi, is just so awkwardly hidden at the border that we can't go there for a pilgrimage. He had to move there from Susisaari's Kuuntelevavuori to flee the Pope. In the world he is known as Santa Claus, which translated to the end means holy eggs when it comes to Leminkäinen. Long live that pukkikulttuuri, or goat culture, which is also completely unknown, at least to academics, although it is very visible above them. It is actually present in the building of the University of Helsinki as an expression of the Ionian culture in the capitals of the columns, which were originally, however, the crooked horns of a goat. That goat then butts us from many directions. The Babylonian Egyptian calendar, which is said to be the first in the world, also begins with the goat month of the spring equinox, because the ram is a pukki too, and Bock beer is really strong. And now there is still Ior Bock, as if to tease us unbelievers. We even each have our own sauna. At least we have more of them than the rest of the world combined. Before, we also had the family of Ukko, Ahti, Väinämöinen, who kept the lake and from whom we still draw stories. Then Sweden ruled here for 759 years, after which Napoleon and Alexander I agreed on 7/7/1807 that Finland would be made a European model state, which Alexander would adopt from wandering around Sweden's armpit as his own Grand Duchy, as he did in 1809. He commissioned the German architect Carl Ludwig Engel to design the entire city, Helsinki, its center, according to the Golden Section, the code of which is now visible, a miracle too, also in the area code of Finland when someone phones here from abroad, 358, and which Pythagoras had already classified 2,500 years ago as the prime number of aesthetic harmony and the world. Is it a coincidence? Hardly. It can even be seen in the relationship between the finger joints. We now have evidence that the Earth's civilization and culture, cult of Tur, originated here in the north according to several sources of information, already from the time before the Ice Age, as well as from the time after the Ice Age, and especially after the Phoenicians left here and gave languages and numbers and money to the Hebrews, Egyptians, Latinists, and Greeks. Alexander made this country suitable for himself because he had to stage his death in 1825 in order to pass the crown to his younger brother Nikolai, and he came here to his own country disguised in a monk's robe to hide where no one knew how to look for him, in Snappertuna, after buying the so-called Bock's house for himself. First he came to Bock's farm in Degerö, and then in one of the pensioners' cottages on the island of Strömsö, where he lived from 1844, a total of 29 years. Until in 1854, at Easter, he was taken via Viapuri to Valamo, where he soon died. Alexander's coffin in St. Petersburg, St. Peter's Church, is empty. It was dated in 1920. In Viapuri, now Suomenlinna, when the magnificent gold-domed cathedral was inaugurated, which had a very special meaning for the Romanov family, it was there that the controversial Jerusalem key had to be received, the control of which was also one of the reasons for the Crimean War. The church was also a landmark as the beginning and end point of the ancient meridian that divides the earth into east and west, and from which all the male members of the Russian court, Nicholas I and his sons, had come to pay respect when they saw the then already old Alexander. All of that is relevant to this story as well, which is one of the biggest miracles here because at the time of the full moon in August of that same year, 1854, Vladimir Menshikov, the son of the governor-general, led the court painter Robert Wilhelm Aikman to Strömsa Island to hear the story about Leminkäinen's wedding. And he painted it for the next 12 years, and only now it gives us its amazing prehistoric story, hidden in this painting, a story in which Lönnrot and Topelius are also involved, but in which the entire Väinämöinen family takes the stage again to tell what our wedding and life in Uudenmaa, especially told by Ior Bock, have been like. Please, dear citizens, open the curtain. The play begins. The history of Robert Aikman's painting, Väinämöinen's play, who commissioned it, who and what it represents, and its connection with the Kalevala. Now is both the first and also the last chance to bring the history, story, people, and beautiful pictures of this wonderful painting to everyone's view, because it is probably the most unknown of our otherwise known paintings. Even so that not even its real name, Leminkäinen's wedding, is known, but the wrong name above is still used. However, all the information that exists about it has been collected for the first time since its completion more than 140 years ago, and the passages from the Kalevala that have served as examples. The painting is so big, about 3.5 by 4.5 meters, that if you see it, for example, as an A square, its details are no longer distinguishable. Its people, beauty, and message remain unseen and unperceived. Its place would definitely be the Athenaeum, where it would be visible to everyone and above all in an air-conditioned space, because now it gets dusty and dark when no one seems to be taking care of it. The second and more complete version of Elias Lönnrot's Kalevala had appeared in 1849. Sakari Topelius wrote that play, Princess of Cyprus, about it, which was performed for the first time in 1860. And the court painter, Robert Wilhelm Aikman, began sketching this painting in 1854, so they must have been aware of each other's work. However, this painting was not completed until 1866, but Vladimir Menshikov took it to the Anjala Manor that had been given to them, where it remained for another 10 years, until it was brought to Helsinki at the then Nya Teatern, now Svenska Teatern, where it was a background image when that Topelius play was performed for Alexander II and the Russian imperial family. And from there it was brought to the music hall of the old student house, Vanha, where it has been ever since. The Romanovs must have been aware of the ancient importance of the Finns and the Vinland of Uden, because already Catherine II, who raised Alexander as a ruler from a young age, made a list of the ancient kings of Finland. And this is special. It's commissioned by the Governor-General of Finland, later the Crown Prince of Finland. Since 1833, Alexander Menshikov's son, Vladimir, the Prince of Finland, contacted the well-known artist of that time, Robert Aikman, in the summer of 1854, during the Ulanni War, and commissioned him to paint this work. Why he? So why did Vladimir Menshikov order it, and where had he planned to hang it, we don't know exactly. The rich and influential Menshikov family had already been the best friend and supporter of the Romanov imperial family since the beginning of time, which Peter the Great had already taken advantage of, and whom they had always been able to trust, even during the reign of Nicholas I. The board was so big that no place could be found for it at that time. There were no such high rooms anywhere except maybe in the Governor-General's residence in Viapuri, the royal palace, but it was destroyed in the bombardment of Viapuri in August 1855. Aikman painted this work in his studio in Kisko. He apparently got the fabric for it from Russia because there certainly wasn't such a large size available here. From Elias Lönnroth's Kalevala and Ganander's Mythologia Fennica, the same stories were taken by Aikman and apparently influenced his painting. But this is from Lönnroth. Väinämöinen, ancient minstrel, the eternal wisdom singer, leaves his hands to snowy whiteness, sits upon the rock of joyance, on the stone of song he settles, on the mount of the silver clearness, on the summit golden-colored, takes the harp by him created, in his hands the harp of fishbone, with his knee the arch supporting, takes the harp strings in his fingers, speaks these words to those assembled, "Hither come, ye Northland people, come and listen to my playing, to the harp's entrancing measures, to my songs of joy and gladness." This is how poem 41 of the Kalevala begins, and we see this scene right in the middle of the painting. According to Lönnroth, Väinämöinen played with a fishbone kantele, but Ganander only talks about a regular kantele, which we also see in this painting. However, even in the Kalevala, Ukko later has an ordinary 5-string kantele made of birch, when the herringbone one had fallen into the water and drowned. That's when old Väinämöinen started playing nicely the pike bone scrap, the kantele made of fish bones. The fingers rose flexibly, the thumb uplightened, joy came to joy, rejoicing for rejoicing. It seemed that as the music was being played, the song was becoming more effective. The pike's teeth flashed, the fish's mouth erupted, the magnificent strings howled, strings from the fresh shawl of the horse. Old Väinämöinen called. There was no such thing as running on all fours in the forest, wandering around the leaves of the birch trees when you didn't come to hear it, to absorb the joy. That's right, with a sharp eye we can distinguish a bear, a wolf, a fox, a moose, a roebuck, and several small birds, including swans, even though the painting itself is very dark in many places. As an aside, Aikman's original concept art had a goat or bock among the characters. We understand this to be a Boxstöm reference that was omitted from the final version, perhaps as too overt. Tapiola's wisest senior, Metsola's most notable landlord, and of Tapio, the people, young and aged, men and maidens, flew like red deer up the mountains, there to listen to the playing, to the harp of Väinämöinen, Tapiola's wisest mistress, hostess of the glen and forest. There were birds in the sky, crickets with 2 wings. They came whistling, shouting, and hurrying, hearing respect and absorbing joy. From high Kokko flew, through the clouds a hawk, seagulls from the deep waves, swans from the frozen marshes. Väinämöinen, ancient minstrel, played one day and then a second, played the third from morn till even. There was neither man nor hero, neither ancient dame nor maiden, not in Metsola a daughter, whom he did not touch, to weeping. Even Väinämöinen, after playing for a long time, was enchanted, and his eyes watered. The tears flowed profusely from the eyes, through the bosom, from his beard in streamlets into the water, where they turned into sea pearls, which the duck dived into the water, retrieving them and returning them to Väinämöinen's hand, receiving a feather coat as a reward, since the raven had failed in that, and none of the young people, the people of the country, could do it. They were, quote, playing the instrument, unquote. Soitimella. That's what they said about the people who paced their weddings with music, as they used to do, dancing at weddings. Now we think only forest birds are soitimella, playing the instrument. We can all see Väinämöinen, Matere, Leminkäinen, Suometar, Ilmarinen, and Ilmatar in that painting. Leminkäinen as the groom in the background, with a tall peaked cap on his head. Suometar, his bride, next to him. On the left side we see Akka, and below Ilmarinen and Ilmatar side by side, partially covered by bulrushes and other water plants, embodying the rise of humanity from the sea, as told in poems 1 and 2 of the Kalevala. In their hands the moon's fair daughters held their weaving combs of silver. In their hands the sun's sweet maidens grasped the handles of their distaffs, weaving with their golden shuttles, spinning from their silver spindles on the red rims of the cloudlets, on the bow of many colors, as they hear the minstrel playing, hear the harp of Väinämöinen. Quick they drop their combs of silver, drop their spindles from their fingers, and the golden threads are broken. Broken are the threads of silver. We can see that beautiful spot on the right side of the board at its top. In the lower part of the painting we see swans and 3 nature goddesses, nymphs in the water, with them. The Kalevala tells about them like this. Sotka's daughters from the deep blue, sisters of the waved-washed ledges, on the colored strands were sitting, smoothing out their sea-green tresses, with the combs of molten silver, with their silver-handled brushes, brushes forged with the golden bristles. When they hear the magic playing, hear the harp of Väinämöinen, fall their brushes from the billows, fall their combs with the silver handles to the bottom of the waters, unadorned their heads remaining, uncombed their sea-green tresses. These nature maidens or water maidens were naked, and it was apparently not to everyone's liking. So at some point, maybe when that painting was the background in the theater, white water lily flowers were added to cover the strategic parts of these nymphs that were too daring to show at the time. This is a beautiful poem. You should read it in its entirety, perhaps the most beautiful of the Kalevala poems, this 41st one. On the right side of the painting we can still see a beautiful image of a paddled raft, where Leminkäinen is with his Suometar and a small baby in his arms, 1 year after the wedding, in a tender family scene, a view to the future. It is only from these partial pictures that we clearly see all the people and animals precisely. This whole painting comes to life for all of us to admire more than 140 years after its completion. Ekman must also have been aware of Greek mythologies, because a passage from there fits this passage so well. These nature nymphs and weavers, the Horai. The Horai were the daughters of the supreme god Zeus and the goddess of righteousness, Themis. They guarded the lives of mortals and brought with them the seasons, winter, spring, summer, and autumn. They were Irene, peace, Eunomia, order, and Dike, justice. In addition, there were 3 others, Clotho, Lachesis, and Atropos, the Moiras or Fates, who weave the cloth of gold, silver. They measure and cut our threads of life and weigh good and evil. It would be a good idea to stop using the word whore because what has most obviously meant whore from the beginning, there is only one letter difference, which is very close phonetically from O to U. Our language needs cleaning up, and women need more value. The painting was not completed until 1866 because Ekman had other works in between. Among other things, he painted Väinämöinen-themed pictures in the ovals on the friezes of the Nya Teatern's auditorium. But an arsonist set the entire theater on fire 3 years after its completion, in 1863. And it was completely destroyed, including those paintings, of which some did not like. Now Vladimir Menshikov took possession of that painting by Ekman after it was finished, and took it on a roll to Anjala's mansion, which the Senate had given to the Menshikovs forever. And it stayed on a roll because there wasn't a wall high enough to hang it there either. Ekman came to show this painting on the island of Strömsa on 3/3/1866, on the 50th birthday of Carl Gustaf, painting him as Väinämöinen, which is thus the birthday of that remarkable painting. Later, the Senate redeemed it or confiscated it because Alexander II had fired the Menshikovs immediately after coming to power in 1855, after Nikolai committed suicide because of the Crimean War. And it was first taken to the then Nya Teatern, now the Svenska Theater, where it was seen for the first time by the public and only once as a backdrop in that Topelius play, The Princess of Cyprus, which tells about Leminkäinen's bride-hunting trip to Saaremaa, Cyprus, in poem 11 of the Kalevala, and which was presented to the members of the entire imperial family of Alexander II of Russia, who came here in Finland at the time on July 15, 1876, when Alexander handed out miniatures of his family in the form of playing cards to the accompanying members of the Bock family, Jacob Emil and Christina. As you know, they have not been published anywhere before. The old Vanha burned down in 1978, and the painting was barely saved, after which it was taken to be cleaned, so the colors became visible again. I just have to ask if Vanha is the right place to keep it. Now it's getting dark again because all kinds of events are held in the hall where it is, and there are often a lot of people, dust and dirt in the air, and there's no air conditioning. If we really put our imaginations to the test, we still have one more surprise in store, namely the 12-striped design on the ceiling of the old stone church in Sipu, which dates back to the 1450s. The Jatulintarha, or Giant's Garden, where Suometar is placed in the middle of it, is unique in the whole world. It depicts her vagina and the long and winding journey of Leminkäinen's seed to Suometar's egg on their wedding night in Valhalla. However, one thing remains to be thought about. What did Topelius mean when he named the play Princess of Cyprus? Where is that Cyprus where Leminkäinen sought his bride, the most beautiful girl in the world, Kyllikki, after having previously landed and tried all the 1,000 girls on the island, of which only 3 were untouchable? He spent the days shepherding. The nights are in the joys of dreams, in those maidens' contests, in the braided girls' parties. There was no daughter whom he did not touch, whom he did not lie down next to. The only possible explanation here comes to mind, and it comes from the work of Felice Vinci, Homer in the Baltic, in which he names Saaremaa on the Baltic side of the coast of Estonia as Kypro. And if you think of it as Cyprus, that's where the goddess of love and the most beautiful woman in the world, Aphrodite, landed. And there, in Cyprus, the king of that island, Pygmalion, carved a marble statue on the most beautiful woman, to whom he prayed to the gods to give her life, which happened. Elisa was born. And on this subject, Bernard Shaw made a play, Pygmalion, and it was also made into a musical, My Fair Lady, in which a flower girl who speaks horrible East London slang is sculpted into a courtly beauty. Of course, that story can also be found in the Kalevala, when Ilmarinen tried to forge the world's most beautiful woman out of gold and silver. He wasn't satisfied with his cold bride. I guess he didn't know how to pray for her spirit and soul. But that mysterious Cyprus, its old name is Ösel. In the maps printed in Holland, but also in older Swedish maps. In that Ö is an island, and Sel is apparently a cell or something inside. It remains a mystery. But the neighboring island of Hedenmaa is Dragö, or Dragon's Island, so Hisi must be Vesihisi himself, our friend Ahti, of course. As for Leminkäinen, he became the best man, burst out red-blooded, who was worthy in mind and fit for his position. But he went a little wrong. His ways were ruined. He only lived in women, spent nights at parties, in the joys of those imps, with the maids of braided tresses. He sought his bride Kyllikki. Kylli was Saari's lady, Saari's flower, grew up high in the mountains, from a kingly house descended. Suitors came from afar to the beautiful mansion. For his son the day star woos her, but she will not go to Sunland. For her son the bright moon woos her, but she will not go to the moonland. For his son the night star woos her, but she will not go to Starland. The island, which has been heavily speculated as to which place it is, but according to one theory, Väinämöinen and his family lived there in the area of present-day Latvia, in Suvantola, along the Väinäjoki, in the bottom of the Gulf of Riga, Rianlahti, on the site of present-day Riga, which is not a long way from Saaremaa, never mind. This would explain some of the oddities of the Kalevala. The question is, how could Topelius know all that? And what about the models for that painting? They were the members of the Bock family. And here is the biggest surprise. They are themselves the ancient Ukko family. Their son Wilhelm is about to get married, and he will become the new Leminkäinen. Väinämöinen is Carl Gustaf Boxstöm. Ilmarinen is Alfred, Ilmatar is Wilhelmina, and Akka is Eva Lovisa, born Finberg. This wedding was supposed to take place in 1872, so the painting was completed ahead of time. That's why the bride's name is not known. She hadn't been chosen yet. There is also a tragedy here because Wilhelm, Alfred, and Wilhelmina died in 1870 in a raging typhoid epidemic, and a new wedding with a new bridegroom could not really be celebrated until 15 years later, in 1887, when the new bridegroom, Knut Victor, had fulfilled the family's criteria of 27 years, and the bride was then Hilma Matilda Collin. There is also a wedding invitation card for it. Of course, these members of the Ukko family used to wear in the past, in this kind of celebration which was always celebrated in Asgård, Valhalla, the current Suomenlinna's castle yard, its arena, once in a generation, accessories whose traces we can still see on the flags of different countries and on the coat of arms of Finland. The bridegroom, Leminkäinen, the god of fertility, Solbakken Balder, had a red outfit with a golden yellow belt, and those colors have been inherited in our coat of arms, which also includes the kokko or phoenix bird, its head and beak at the end of the hilt of the saber. Then, when he eventually became Ukko Juliumala, the big god, Solbakken Balder Pair, ruler of heaven and earth, he changed himself to a white belt, and we see those colors on the Danish flag. Suometar, the goddess of fertility, the swan of Finland, had a white outfit with a blue-white belt, the colors of the Finnish flag. When she eventually became Akka, Mater, Rea, after her last son turned 27, she changed herself into a red belt. Those colors can still be seen on the flag of Switzerland, Helvetia, today. Ilmarinen, the first son, the king, the god of love, Månbacken Balder, had a blue outfit with a golden yellow belt, the colors of which were later inherited by the Swedish flag. The words Gud, God, Gott mean good, human seed, nectar, sperm. Ilmatar, the first daughter, the queen, goddess of love, Kärleksgudinna, had a blue outfit with a silver-colored wide belt, which colors we still see today on the flag of Greece, our kindred nation, reversed from our flag. After all, this is where they went to settle, Greece, Hellas, pronounced Elas, the part Ela being Akka, when it was freezing cold 3 years in a row, 3,650 years ago, exactly 1648 BC. The new Suometar was apparently chosen on the site of present-day Tallinn, then belonging to Uudenmaa, formerly called Reifval, which means fox fair, and still in English, a beautiful and sexy woman is called foxy lady, foxy nymph. Near Tallinn, there is still Naisari, where these women candidates have first arrived. From there, this lucky chosen one is rowed in a big galley to the current Susisaari, first to Akka's care in her tower. After all, Suometar had to give birth to a whole new family of gods, and she was always chosen as the most beautiful woman in the world, Aphrodite, Elisa, Suometar, Kyllikki, once every generation from some outside nation as Leminkäinen's spouse. Therefore there was always new blood in the family, and she was taken care of like the queen bee. She was an important member of that family. The word Suometar tells about her like this. That word should be pronounced Suometar, but it means Suometar, as well as Suomi, Some, in which case the first syllable so means to sow, to seed. Its second part we means me, and its suffix tar, to take. So the whole word Suometar means sow me, I will take the seed. Finland is Vinland, the land of seeds. Vin equals seed. We may not understand the history of Finland using only the Finnish language. That root language, the coastal Swedish of Uudenmaa, must always be taken into account. Those beautiful outfits they may have worn at the very wedding ceremony when they were playing the instrument, soitimella, then long ago, before the year 1050, only once in a generation, when the Ukko family still inhabited and held power in the land of Uden, in Finland, which name appears on 2 Dutch maps in 1675 and 1700, and in the Chronicle of Adam of Bremen. What about the crosses on those flags? They were not crosses because they are horizontal, and the cross should be upright. So what do they represent? These crosses of the flags of Finland, Sweden, and Denmark depict swords, which were always signs of the value of the father of the family, such as Ukko in the coat of arms of Finland. As the emblem of his father, it was not a striking weapon. A straight sword always had 2 sharp edges, 2 eggs, muna, and the Latin word vagina, representing a woman's vagina, means sheath or tuppi. The sword is inserted into the sheath, saber into scabbard. From these kings of Sweden and Denmark, Sven and Dan, more than 9,000 years ago, all the other royal families of Europe are descended, but they both were Ukko's sons. It doesn't sound believable, does it? But let's take an excerpt from Uppsala Bishop Olaus Magnus, extensive book series, Finnish History of the Northern Nations, recently translated into Finnish by Kai Linila. When Noah and his sons had left the ark, they began to teach their descendants according to their father's instructions, which later spread over the world, as is evident from the testimonies of reliable writers. Over the course of time, more than 34 kings have migrated from the north to different parts of the world and founded great kingdoms, as I have shown in more detail in my work, Carta Gothica, printed in Venice in 1539. Well, the Catholic Archbishop of Sweden telling about Ukko Noah in Pohjola, the same thing that Ior Bock has also said. But he said something else, that in Finland they brew such strong beer, Bock, of course, that women give birth to a lot of twins. All beer was Bock beer. The Bock family had a monopoly on it because only they had the original recipe, how to make it ferment with a man's sperm. And according to Ior's story, Noah was ordered to sow 4 different grains, wheat, rye for bread, oats for horses, and barley for beer. Well, we obviously can't find out everything anymore. Let's enjoy what we see now. However, Suomitar, Kyllikki, or Elisa, has been reborn. Lönnrot Topelius Paasius, who composed the music for that play, and from the thoughts, pens, and brushes of Robert Wilhelm Akeman comes a stunningly beautiful love story from our far Finnish past, from Väinämöinen mythology, but which certainly has a basis in reality as well. But in fact, only its wrong name is known about the entire painting is incomprehensible. And even more incomprehensible is that neither the Athenaeum nor the Helsinki Student Union are interested in this story, despite my offer. Ior Bock told this writer only a year ago this Alexander I story about his stay here under the protection of the Bock family for the first time. It probably also had a meaning in the ordering of that painting. The personal information in the painting is from him. They are all members of his family. Carl Gustaf is his grandfather, and the new groom, Knut Victor, is his father, who conceived him at the age of 80. According to the hierarchy of his family, he is Ilmarinen, the king of Rasapuri, now the last one, and Ilmarinen has never had offspring. He was a full-time ruler and wise man, also according to the family's traditions. To go back to the ordering of that painting, a member of the family, Jacob Emil, in the painting he's the goblin boy who is very dark in the background and holds a snake in his hand. He had been Vladimir Menshikov's mentor, tutor for a long time, and he told him the family saga and why apparently he was interested in it so much that he ordered it, although it must have been influenced by Alexander I, whose grandmother, Catherine II, who raised Alexander, had already made a list of ancient Finnish kings. Robert Aikman also spent a lot of time on the family's island in Strömsö, off Snappertuna, during the Ulanni War, listening to their stories about Finland's ancient history, which he then seemed to hide in the painting itself, and which can only now be told in its entirety. The point is that this information was even preserved at all, for such a long time. There is still one very delicious detail to be told about those ancient weddings, related to the development of language. As always, we want to dance at weddings. That way has a very long tradition. But our current way of dancing the wedding waltz is only a distant and pale reminder of what it once was. An amazing event where we really put effort into making the wedding an unforgettable experience, the worth of which the initiation of a new king or queen in the family would require. The name of the wedding dance is fackeldans, and fack is an open case or folder where something else, now something else, is easily put inside and taken out, in, out, in, out. Eld is fire, and one name of the dance is soituntansi, the torch dance. It is also a kiras tulitansi, a pure fire dance, where kiras equals imentuska, or maiden pain. Goblin boys and flower girls dance wildly with their wedding couple, singing and playing with torches in their hands around the decorative tent-covered pillar bed of the newlywed couple. In the echo of cheers and general joy, the time rose after dancing. They were making a new king, according to the rhythm of the music, of course, with the ever-increasing tempo of the cymbals, drums, and flutes, inspiring their powerful playing, petting, until they experienced a common earth-shaking climax, as Leminkäinen's seed erupted with the power of Suometar into the womb again and again, until they sank down to rest, having given all they had, as the music and the song slowly faded away. A perfect Finnish love story from distant antiquity. The last time the wedding of Leminkäinen and Suometar was celebrated as late as 11/4/1887 in Turku, maybe not as described in the description, but still. Leminkäinen was then Knut Victor, Ior's father, and Suometar, Hilma Matilda, born Colin. So our past is still quite close. Information about these ancient weddings also passed through Gotland and Denmark to the royal house of Sweden and Germany as early as 9,000 years ago, so they too have at least a little knowledge of these things, such as, for example, at their weddings they dance a torch dance, so that the guests walk around the wedding table with torches in their hands as the music moved, like still in the 17th century in Stockholm's royal palace, as Sakari Topelius has told. But back to the name of the fackled dance. After that well-known naughty four-letter word, fuck, comes king, to describe this event where a new king is made. Not even the English naughty dictionaries know the origin of this word fac, which this proves that the languages also come from here in the north. To describe this event, the passionate petting of Leminkäinen in Suometar in the pillared bed on the platform, which is covered with the tent-like decorative fabric, himmel, sky to which we rise, Ganender has captured an authentic Väinämöinen saying, Tuli leiskuvi lavista, kipunat vitun kiasta. The fire flamed out of the hole, sparks out of the jaws of the pussy. In that the bride is already very horny, and no wonder, she has been fed and drunk with nectar, sperm, for the whole month before the wedding. Kirstorstai, or Maundy Thursday, refers to this event, this imantuska, or maiden pain, and engagement or betrothal. As a result, a new ruler of the earth, a king, was born at the time of the winter solstice, and a new sun for mankind. Jul equals Yule, or Christmas, equals Aurinko, or sun. As we still celebrate it today, let it be mentioned that only in Finland was the custom that the breeder and the king were always a different person. In other parts of Europe, the king was always both ruler and progenitor of the family, the breeder. You'll learn from this, but it's good to remember that only the sperm of a sober and fit vegetarian will taste good if you start pouring it on the bride as confirmation, and it must not come in contact with oxygen, so it must be enjoyed directly from the faucet, kran. Leminkäinen, lem equals a man's itlim, pirouette family, was the ancestor of all people because, in addition to Suometar, he fertilized the Disors in his tower of Samanluoto, and the lords, Roset, who gave birth to the earls, Jarlet, who begat crofters, Karlet, who begat workers, Trelet, and they no longer got to bear children. Sperm, or nectar, was sacrificed up the same ladder to Leminkäinen and Ukko. Robert Wilhelm Aikman, 1808-73, painted this painting of Leminkäinen's wedding between 1854 and 1866, over a period of 12 years. But during that time he certainly painted other things. He was a court painter and a pioneer in his patriotic enthusiasm. He influenced the entire nation through his work. He recorded Porvoo's political days in his painting. He painted altarpieces and frescoes of Turku Cathedral. And he founded Finland's first drawing school. There is also a painting by him called Kreta Hapasalo playing the kantele in a peasant cottage, from 1868, or so it is thought that it is, but it is wrong. The members of the Bock family who were the models for the Leminkäinen's wedding painting are actually present in this painting, and it was painted in his studio in Kisko. He never signed his paintings. Elias Lönnrot, 1802-84, is included in this Kalevala, but his credit list is so long that it cannot be repeated here. There are 2,400 poems in his footsteps, 75,000 verses in them. So much material that it is said that 7 different Kalevalas could have been made from it. Elsewhere in the lockers of SKS, there are almost all the erotic and sexual poems that could not be published then, and apparently still cannot be, even if the time is already ripe for that. Sakari Topelius, 1808 to 98, writer, professor of history, and journalist, is also included in this story with his play The Princess of Cyprus. And he has credits and recognition too, so many that it is best to read them somewhere else. There's no need to repeat them here. These three well-respected lords lived at the same time and must have known each other and known what each other did. And so they have been able to create something like this, downright divine art and knowledge about the amazingly beautiful antiquity of our Finns. Since that great past of ours can still be seen today in so many places, in Christmas celebrations, in gingerbread, and in our coats of arms, it is also worth remembering those old name days that still decorate our almanac, because they tell about our ancient ancestors, about our mothers, lest we forget. And then we could raise Finland's beautiful Blue Cross flag in their honor. So, Sampo, 3-4, Ukko, 4-4, Suometar, Rea, 8-4, Aino, 10-5, Sampo's spouse and first wife. Seppo Ilmarinen, 10-6. On this day in 1248, the Swedish king Birger Jarl met him and took over Finland. At that time, the last king of Finland had to give up his crown. Ahti, 21-6. Ilmatar, 26-8. Nikolai, Neklas, Leminkäinen, Santa Claus, 6-12. And it wouldn't be too much to flag the Grand Duke of Finland, Alexander I, as well, 11-9. His portrait could be seen in a better place. Now it is in the yard of the University Library, and you can only see it through a little gap in the fence. Yes, and of course, on 7/7, on Klaus's day, it is in a way Ukko Noah's day, and the day when Napoleon and Alexander I agreed on Finland and made every day of Finland's destiny sunnier. The last Ukko died in 1897, the last Akka, 1916, the last Leminkäinen, Ior's father, in 1942, the last Ilmatar, Rakel, Ior's sister, 1976, and the last Jotsen, Rea, Ior's mother, in 1984. And now, in 2007, the last Ilmarinen is still with us, now 65 years old, Ior Bock. And when there has been so much distorted information about Ior, based on an acquaintance that has developed into a 10-year friendship, I will correct some of the worst ones here. Ior does not accept drugs or alcohol, neither for himself nor for his friends, except hemp, which he was taught to smoke at the age of 14, then bought from a pharmacy, and which he says calms but does not cause addiction. The heads of the family had been aldermans in Snappertuna for centuries, and before settling matters with the board members, a peace pipe was always lit. We sit at his place on the floor with only candlelight and drink tea, because the most important thing is a philosophical reflection on, for example, the original meanings of different old words in different languages. Everything else is pointless. He feels special because he lives within the saga of his own family. His memory is phenomenal. He has a list of his paternal ancestors since 1250, when they returned from the 200-year exodus from Korvatunturi. Bock equals goat, from which period we get our Christmas sun-goat story. He controls the sound system of his family, which is used to unlock old words and to go back in time to the beginning of life itself. He is quadriplegic from when he was stabbed by a demented drug addict whom he chased away from the group, and luckily Ior didn't die then. Otherwise, he is completely healthy, having drunk his own sperm since the so-called sauna knot or bastuknut was taught at the age of 7, but not anymore. He is almost 100% vegetarian, and he consumes a lot of yogurt. He has no telly or radio. The only newspapers are Kirkpressen and the Swedish Dam, which tells insider information about the royals. He is invited to belong to the Freemasons' Lodge, which has its lodge in the Royal Palace of Sweden and is led by the king, but he does not partake in its activities. He never thinks anything negative about anyone, not even his stabber. He says he is a happy man. He was a guide at Suomenlinna for 30 years, which many people remember him for. It should be mentioned that the Bock Saga, or Väinämöinen's mythology, is the only completely non-violent mythology in the whole world. At least in theory, there is nothing negative about it anywhere. It is completely pure and beautiful, also regarding sexual life, and the position of women in it is even better than today. This and other of my own books can be ordered from the address below. Argus and Opus, Northern Maidens as Priestesses in Greece 3,300 years ago, 1998. The Master Plan, Bock Saga in English 2000. Pukki Leminkäinen's Eggs 2001. Tales of Finland's Ancient History 2002. Leminkäinen and Suometar's Wedding in Valhalla 2005.